Aloha! This is Olivia Trice with the HIFF Online Critics and Creators Immersive Program, aka HOKI. You're listening to the HIFF Talks podcast, the official podcast for the Hawaii International Film Festival. Today, I interviewed Darieus Legg, the artist behind the HIFF 43 key art and trailer. I'm here today with Darieus Legg, who you may have seen his Stoker Machine short documentary at HIFF this year, but you also may notice him from the key art and the poster and the animated trailer for HIFF 43 this year, which was honestly some of the most amazing key art I've seen in a very long time. Super creative. And his short film, Stoker Machine, has won several awards, including Best Animation, Best Short Documentary, and I had the pleasure of seeing Stoker Machine after just being enthralled by the opening animation. And he's been asking people all over where he's screening his film, what makes him stoked? So without further ado, it's Darieus. Thank you so much for coming and joining me for this little podcast.
You are most welcome, and thank you for that incredible introduction. I'm really grateful to be here. And when I first met you at the festival, I was super into your energy, and I'm so glad we're getting a chance to talk. So thank you for having me on here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I studied multimedia cinematic production, which kind of spans film production, animation, graphic design, and I only got like a bit of a taste of an animator's life in film school. But seeing you incorporate all of those things into a fully formed project was really inspiring to me. I think I told you when I met you, I was just like such a huge fan because I could tell it took a lot of work.
Yeah. um, in fact, if I knew how much work it was going to take when I decided to point my life in that direction, I don't know. I'm glad I didn't think about that at the time because it is a lot of work. But uh, it's interesting. What feels like work for someone might just be bliss for someone else. There were times though making it felt like a lot of work, but I was so excited by the feeling I got from imagining what it could look like to combine my love for surfing, my love for drawing, animation, and filmmaking all in one thing. And that excitement is what not only got me through the hard work, but it just drove me every day. I was always learning something about myself and about art and life. So that kept me on the track.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I watched a documentary this year, Jonah Hill's documentary Stutz,
So
and
good.
yeah, right. And it's and
So good.
what you mentioned about work. It kind of reminds me of what Dr. Stutz said. One of the most common occurrences in life everyone's going to have to deal with is just the idea of constant work, which can be overwhelming at times. But I noticed that with the Stoker Machine and with the key animation that you created, it emanates that you put a lot of work into it. But I also had a sense that it wasn't just work, it was also passion and interest and curiosity. And that kind of brings me to this whole new concept for me, but probably not so new for others, which is Stoke. And I noticed that there were elements of Stoke in the key art and in the animation, but the Stoker Machine has elements of movement and surf, but also finding your passion, and so I wanted to ask you about Stoke and what does Stoke mean to you first off?
Well, um, hmm. To me, Stoke is joy. It's curiosity, excitement, just feeling very uh, excited, like feeling very excited about something or anything. And I think, I think when we really care about something, I think Stoke also means caring a lot to me. And it's amazing what can happen when we care about something bigger than ourselves. And for me, the idea of spreading the joy and stoke I get out of surfing and drawing and people, because like the film is centered around a person, Chad Campbell, who's the subject of the documentary. I admire him as a person a lot, and I care about him a lot. And I wanted to reflect and translate that through film and animation. I care about surfing a lot. I wanted to reflect and translate that through animation and film. So, and the idea was to capture the essence of Stoke within that. So, yeah, I think Stoke for me just it means excitement and joy and then caring, a lot of caring. Because when we care about something, it shows when we're done and we share it with people. But Stoke is such a um, yeah, I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different surfers for sure, and to a lot of different people.
Yeah, that's amazing. I wonder how you were even introduced to this idea of Stoke. Was it through surfing? Was is Stoke it's more like a cultural term to surf?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where I learned it. I learned it as a young boy growing up on the Big Island in Kona, Hawaii, and that's the first time I ever heard the word. And it was through surfers, and I equated it to, I kind of vaguely remember the first time that word was like in my life. I was about, I think, between 13 years old and 12 years old, and I remember when people used it, there was excitement to it. There's like a pop of joy that came out of the person. And it was from surfers. And it was usually having to do with how the weather and wave conditions were. So it was like super glassy, which means not a lot of wind, and pumping waves, which means a big swell was in town or an average size swell that was, surfers love surfing waves. So when there's waves, that usually makes them very stoked. So, yeah, that's a first introduction to it. And I had no idea when I started this film project, Stoker Machine, that it would cause me to kind of reflect so much, not on the word, but the feeling that comes with the word and all the things like we just talked about, right? So it's like joy and excitement, curiosity, caring. I just started reflecting on that stuff because I was not stoked when I started Stoker Machine. Yeah, was
Yeah,
not stoked as a person.
yeah, and I want to get into that as well because you mentioned that at the screening as well. But a lot of what I'm learning about Stoke and going off what you just said also reminds me about life and just and a perspective shift on like taking the conditions of life. Like right now, there's so much going on in the world, and it's easy to wake up and see all the choppy, weather of life and just kind of want to retire and run away from it. But something that I took away from your screening and as well as the trilogy screenings, that was like just a whole day of surf, which was amazing to me. Was just I was inspired by the eagerness to go out and play regardless, regardless of the scary conditions, regardless of the unknown. And it sounds like your venture into creating the Stoker machine was a little bit like that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And just so I make sure I'm understanding, you're saying that possibly my entry into going out making Stoker Machine was this like no matter what the conditions in life are, I'm going to push forward and explore it. Did I
Yeah.
hear you right?
Yeah, that exactly. A
Yeah.
short, less lengthy way to get there.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure I understand. Um, Absolutely true. And it's interesting that, you know, the way you're explaining that, because I didn't realize until I began the journey of making Stoker Machine how there are so many things out of our control. Like 99% of life is out of our control. However, we can control like our mind to a degree. We can control our actions, and we can also control the way we furnish the inside of our minds, which, in my opinion, absolutely affects how we engage with the world, no matter what's going on out there. So, with that said, this film really did teach me how important it is to constantly evaluate, assess, and kind of check in with, am I focusing on what I can control? Am I letting go of what I can't control? Um, because had I not done that, I couldn't have made it through the film, because there were so many challenges in making the film. Like enormous, not only personal life challenges, but like, you know, working with people is difficult no matter what you're doing, because everyone has a different agenda, and that doesn't always align what you're trying to accomplish. Some people are afraid and they don't, you know, there might be trust issues. So there's a lot to deal with. And I just kept coming back to this idea that, like, if no one can take my Stoke away from me, and I can maintain that level that I need to get through every day, then I'll be okay, you know? And that's not easy. It's so much easier said than done. But I really think there's an enormous power in not letting others take your Stoke and deciding when you're going to let that happen. And, um, you know, and that's a tangent here, but like, I'm a history nerd and I love studying history. And I remember I was listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, which is a podcast, and he did this one on the Carthaginian Wars when the Romans were in a giant war with the Carthagins, and um, Hannibal Carr was like marching on the doors of Rome, and the Romans had this crazy mindset where they were like, we don't lose until we say we lost, even though they were losing, like, and kind of lost already. He was at the gates, um, or well, close to the gates anyway. And I always thought that was so fascinating. I was like, wow, that's so powerful. Like you see that in a Nelson Mandela as well, or even Viktor Frankl. You see that in people in history who just had armored minds. Like they wouldn't let their inner freedom, their inner joy and happiness be robbed by the outside. Super hard to do. I'm not a master of it by any means, but I am very curious and interested in the idea of it. And I think that's for me like a big part of maintaining my own Stoke on a project, which, you know, anyone who's made a film, and as you know, making a film yourself, like it's there's a lot of crap that can get in the way aside from world events like a war.
Yeah, absolutely. Internal and external challenges. It's like
Huge.
you're making a story, a film about life while experiencing life yourself, which can be, you know, trippy in its own right, to say the least.
100%. You know, I'll say one more thing that because I was just thinking about this yesterday. Excuse me. I'll say one more thing to that. It's really important for me as an artist to make sure I'm doing my art for intrinsic needs and not extrinsic needs. So what I mean by that is, like, I think for a majority of my career, like 10, 11 years, I was working in LA and Hollywood and doing other people's projects and other people's stuff, which is fine. It's all good. It's really all good to help other people, right? That's all good. However, when your need to do it and make art and create is extrinsic, so I need to pay my rent, I need to have a certain amount of money in my account so I can survive. That's an external need to make your art, right? You're putting a lot of pressure on something that, in my experience, doesn't do so well in high stake environments. It's so different than anything else, in my opinion. So when the need is like, I just need to make this art because I need to express myself, I need to explore an idea, I need to feel good about this because it's just for no ends to a mean. It's I just enjoy doing it for its own sake. That's a very intrinsic need. For me, that's an important place to start and maintain through crazy external conditions like we're talking about. Because the external need to do something, it, for me in art, it's not sustainable. It's easily blown over and pushed over by external events if I'm not doing it for intrinsic reasons.
That's really important. I'm really glad that you said that. Because in these days, I think a lot of people are living in somewhat of like a survival mode, and unfortunately, I see a lot of art that's like being made out of survival mode. And you can kind of tell, it's being made for a specific purpose.
100%. I mean, it's gross to me, honestly. I'm not interested in that, but continue. I'm glad you're saying that too, because I'm just so grossed out by it.
Yeah, me too. And I think it kind of begets the real meaning of art and creation. And so, yeah, I think what you're saying is really important, especially, to some of our viewers out there who may be students, for example. And I think you talk about challenges when making the Stoker machine. And I think a big challenge, for me, for, students all over the world is just starting. And I know that you were in a transition when you started making Stoker machine. And so I was wondering, because your process speaks to, I think, the ultimate level of like transmutation from an energy where it's like, I'm not inspired, I don't really want to do this thing, to actually making something that gets you stoked and gets you excited. Can you talk about that transition, what that challenge was, and what about this got you stoked to get started?
Yeah, that's a big one. Rock bottom, really. I mean, I've said this before on other podcasts I've done, but you really don't know how bummed out you can be until all your dreams come true. Like, so I all the external things come true that you always wanted. So the money, the girlfriend, the some award. I mean, because I have awards as a producer as well, and editor. So you get those things, and I'm still miserable at the end of the day. And then it's like, holy cow, I'm the problem. It's not has nothing to do with the stuff out there. You can't. No worldly item is gonna make me stoked. And so that was a big one to kind of face. I knew of this concept. Obviously, everyone's heard, oh, material stuff never makes you happy. And everyone hears that. But until you like really, I think, oh, sorry, I was speaking of first person. Until I actually like encountered it firsthand and was still really disappointed with life, even though when you looked around and on paper, everything looks great. Uh, I was like, ooh, okay, I got to really start examining that thing about this whole inside world more than I have. And I had been already. I mean, I've been a pretty much a lifelong meditator. I learned to meditate when I was 16. So I've been a reflective person, but you when the rubber hits the road is when you really start to get to practice these things that you're practicing literally. Um, so I was really bummed out. I had made some content for a studio I was working full time at as kind of like a development executive, producer, showrunner type of, you know, I wore a lot of hats, but essentially I was working for like the vice president directly for him of the studio and of original content, and then putting out what corporate strategy was and marrying it with creativity, and then um, you know shepherding these projects from literally inception to end. And I was a big part of designing the blueprint for these things. So I had a big hand in it, and then they won awards, and I was like so bummed. I wasn't stoked at all, and like I blamed it on them in the beginning, and that made work really difficult. And then I just like felt like my soul was dying, and I was like, I have to do something for me. Like I can't keep making stuff wondering what other people will think about it, because that's all I've been doing. And there's nothing, look, if you want to make your work that way, I would never, I don't want to shut anybody down for doing it the way they'd like to do it. Do it that way. It's fine. It's just not my way. I've done like 10 years of it to figure that out. Because I'm not interested in what anyone else thinks about my art, you know, and about what I'm creating. So I was like, okay, I better like find something here. Otherwise, I'm gonna lose this thing that it's like being an artist is who I am. Like I'm just how I am in the world, you know? It's just the way I am. And it's like Stoker Machine, literally, I was just paying attention one day. I kind of opened myself up. So the transformation was like, okay, like I'm just going to open up and see what the universe provides me, because I do believe it's always sending in signals to us. If we pay close enough attention, we can get guidance in that way. And literally, my friend comes home one day with that board that's in my film, and he's like, "Yeah, Dar, how's this board, bruh?" There's like, and he starts telling me all about it, and he's excited, and I was like, "That's it. That's. I think that's it." But I didn't want to put pressure on it, so I didn't tell anyone I was making a film. I didn't even tell him I was making a film. Um, and then I just kind of like nurtured it and nurtured my existence with it, meaning like no stakes, didn't care what anyone thought. My girlfriend at the time was super supportive, and thank God she was. She really helped keep me in that headspace because she's a very gentle and kind person and sensitive person as well. So she helped keep me there. And yeah, 3 years later, my whole attitude towards making art changed in a massive way. And my relationship to myself changed. So in a way, Stoker Machine really changed my life, possibly saved my life, because I can't imagine what kind of person I was turning into if I kept on the path I was on.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's it's so relatable to a lot of us in this industry that, is fueled by ambition and accolades and, credits. And I think what's really interesting from what I'm hearing from you is that you had all of that, but it wasn't until you went inward and started reflecting on really what your desires were that, you could, really get to the core of yourself and then birth the Stoker Machine. That
Yes, yes. It couldn't happen in any other order. Like I had to go in first, reconcile, learn to love myself, and not in a self-absorbed way. I want to be really clear about that. Like self-love, self-compassion, and appreciation and gratitude for ourself is not a self-absorbed thing. It's like you're a worse person if you don't love yourself. Like you can't be there for other people unless you know what it's like to be there for yourself, you know, in my opinion. Um, so I just want to be like, I had to do that. And then the world of Stoker Machine opened up, and it's like, I'm still in awe of that. And it's a, I'm still in awe of that. I just can't believe what this year has been like. Yeah.
I just want to first say thank you for being so open and transparent with me. I know I'm asking a lot of like theosophical, like life questions, and I think for me, when after getting to know you and watching your film, I'm really interested in your philosophy of approach because in hindsight, like that's like your pre-production process. It sounds like the personal things that you were going through personally and professionally led you to create this film. And as a filmmaker myself, who's making a documentary about real life, but also wanting to stay grounded in that, I think hearing where you are coming from its inception is really important to me.
Well, yeah, I'm stoked to hear that you find it helpful and useful, because I think, again, for me personally, you said the word pre-production process, which I really love because it instantly reminded me of how much I got in my own way of just my process. So I think for a long period of my artistic life, I just was copying what everyone else was doing and thought I had to do it that way. Literally, when you think of it in terms of pre-production, the steps in which people take are very linear. Um, I didn't realize how much that doesn't work for me because I'm such a non-linear thinker and person in a way. So when I finally got out of my own way and was just allowing myself to explore the process of filmmaking and storytelling in the manner that makes the most sense for me, it all started to just feel fun again.
Yeah, and I think that is where I'm trying to get to. Just having fun with it again. And it sounds like you've had this, you know, successful production background, and you know, from being a showrunner to being a producer. And I wonder, you know, it sounds like you had to take a step back from that, you know, and so just to give the timeline, you know, context for our viewers, this was during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We're able to take, you know, time away from that grind. Is that right?
Sort of. So, so the pandemic, as everyone who experienced it in the U.S., I should say, and was working remotely, because those are two key things, right? Like I was when we were working remotely, and I'm pretty sure this was probably the same for most folks. It's like it just didn't feel real. Like you were being paid to stay home all day, and the laptop was open, and yeah, there was like a bunch of Zoom meetings, but for me there was a bunch of downtime, like. And I was so grateful for that because there was nothing I could do in the world except sit home with my partner. And, you know, my girlfriend was really lovely. So I was really lucky in that I had a great person to be around because that might have been crazy if not. But I had a lot of alone time and quiet time. And so I was working and I was burning out at work. And then I was having a lot of time to think and a lot of time to be bored because I didn't allow myself like infinite amount of Instagram time or infinite amount of computer time. I was really like adamant about not spending my time online. And so I gave myself that permission to be bored. I gave myself that long like surf sessions by myself, runs by myself, and just sitting in the yard by myself, drinking coffee and just thinking like, what the heck am I doing? Like, why do I feel so yucky when everything seems to be going right? And I'm in this beautiful place. By the way, I was able to move back to my hometown of Kona during the pandemic because the job allowed that. And me and my girlfriend lived in a beautiful place in Holo. I mean, it was just the dreamiest life you could imagine. And there I was, like, just really bummed out. And yeah, so that transitional, like, contemplative period was, I mean, I was feeling that way for years. I just want to be clear. Like leading up to that, I was feeling that way. But not luckily, but the pandemic happened and I had that space to think. And that was a giant blessing, silver lining out of that whole time in life was just there's nothing you can do. You have to sit still. And when we sit still, I think a lot of our unchecked emails come to the surface and we have to check them.
And releasing control, you know, it's a huge part of it. I feel like when the world is going crazy, it's like, you know, the silver lining of that, well, it's all going crazy anyways, doesn't mean I have to go crazy with it.
Beautiful.
Um,
So beautiful. So true. Such
what
a great thing to know. I'm so curious. What brought you? How did you come to know that? Because that's a big thing to know, I feel like. Or to have that kind of wisdom is big, you know?
Well, I'm still learning it. I'm still learning it, and I think I'm coming to that now after 3 years of being in production for my documentary, and I think my process has been pretty chaotic, and it's been mostly chaotic because I've wanted to control the story, the beginning, middle, and end, and it's a documentary. You just can't do that. And so I feel like this is what I'm learning from my mentors in film and other people who have made documentaries, and seeing their process and learning, it's a non-linear life. It's a non-linear production process, when you're choosing to make a film about life or a documentary about life.
Yes. Yes.
And I was struggling a lot with telling my story because I wanted to control the story so bad. I wanted to control what people know and what they didn't know, and what I was going to include and what I was going to leave out, and how it was going to end. And it was leading me into this like spiral because it wasn't happening the way I wanted it to.
I want to say something to that because I'm maybe a little more pervy to information than the audience is, and I won't say what your film's about. However, I want to say I hope you're really gentle and kind with yourself in this process, because not only are you making a documentary about, well, documentaries by nature are everything you just said, very difficult to do, very not a controllable thing, and very nonlinear in the way you make them. And there's another layer in yours that's another layer of difficulty, which is you're in it. So that's like the Chappelle, like Antoine Fisher, directed by Antoine Fisher. You don't remember that skit? No, it's just it can be, because you, of course, it's your story. And so that's why, when we were talking about that at HIFF, at the Hawaii International Film Festival, it's like it can be useful when artists are doing concept work like that, or work like that, is to make it more of a concept project than actually about you. So there's that level of detachment, and it's that relinquishing of control by just saying, this is not me, it's a story about this person that's going through all this stuff, right? So I just want to say, like, I hope you're being gentle too, because you've really chosen like the Mount Everest of documentary filming.
100%. And I choose the Mount Everest in what I'm going to have for breakfast each day. Like I
That's amazing.
for choosing the harder path, and I think that has just been kind of my existence. And I think I'm relearning that, where it doesn't have to be so hard, and I think I appreciate you saying that, because when I wasn't being, gentle with myself, I was telling myself I had to have it done, by the time I graduated, or, I had to submit to HIFF this year. And I'm so glad that I didn't, not because I would love to submit to HIFF in the future, but I was just like putting these like expectations on myself and my process. And I mean, I'll just be honest, where I've been in the past 3 years with this project, the majority of the time making it, it's been miserable. I've not been in a great place when making this film, and I realized it was about the control. And when I started to just like release the grip on my story, I can breathe a bit more.
Beautiful. And I'm really glad to hear that. Like, uh, I'm so stoked to hear that. Because I feel like, and this is just my opinion, but I feel like we only do our best work when we're having fun. you
Yes.
know in art, I'm not speaking about, I can't speak for like competition, in terms of like competition athletes and stuff like that. I don't know, it's not my world, but in art, I feel like we have to set these preconditions to allow our best self to come through in the work. And those preconditions, one of them is like being excited and having fun.
Yeah.
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 Like, yeah.
And with that being said, I wanted to ask you, because you do so much. You
Hmm.
draw by hand, you animate, you are a surfer, you're are filming, on ground, underwater. Those are all sound so much fun. But what aspect maybe just of your production process with the Stoke machine was the most fun for you?
Hmm. Most fun. I don't know which one was the most fun. I can say that being outside in the sunlight and in the ocean and just being like a little kid is really fun. It's a really good time. And it's really, yeah, it's like, but all of it. I mean, I think all of it's fun. I really do. I really love every aspect of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And each one is so different. Like holding a camera is, requires different things than like holding a camera on land requires different things than holding a camera in the water. And in Stoker Machine's case, that was the first time I'd ever shot in the water, like ever in my life with a GoPro even. I like literally looked on YouTube to see the settings I should have it on so that it was exposed for above and below water and it wouldn't do that weird exposure thing. Um, but that was like the extent of my training. And but I will say to that, like surfers, you can give any surfer a camera and ask to get like shots of their friends surfing, and they're gonna most likely, out of 10 of those shots, I would guarantee 50% are actually keepers, because surfers know where to position themselves in the water and on the wave, in and around the surf to get that shot. Like most surfers, like will get you a great shot because it's just they know where to be in the relationship to a wave breaking on the reef or sand or whatever. So I had that going for me. I definitely had that going for me because I was in the ocean my whole life, and I always mind filmed what I would love to shoot, and that goes the same for the drawings. Like I've drawn my whole life. I never animated before like I did in Stoker Machine, but I've drawn my whole life. So it's not like I was coming in cold. But yeah, like it was hard. Law was hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I admire your level of curiosity and your just ability to just, if you didn't know, learn it, for the project. And I can't believe that you've never animated before.
Not like that. I mean, I've been in charge of animators and I've done storyboards for what we were trying to accomplish, but no, I never like sat and did all the in-betweens and beyond the keyframing. I never did art direction of at the detail I had to do it anyway. I've done art direction, but I haven't done it at the level where when you're animating a scene, like backgrounds really matter and they can ruin your animation cohesiveness over a period of like I think there's close to 2 minutes of animation in Stoker Machine. So yeah, like that level of detail and having to work things out um, was a first. And I will say it's a good thing the hard drive crashed and I lost a majority of my first year of work because it caused me to have to do it again. And I don't know I would have got the level of satisfaction I felt at the end of making all the animation, which I was very satisfied. Like I don't know I would have had that level of satisfaction had I not had the hard drive crash because I would have made just different choices. I didn't. It's like I got another set of reps in, so to speak.
Wow,
Yeah.
your hard drive crashed and
Mm-hmm.
you lost like the first year of work.
Yeah, hundreds of hand drawing cells. Yeah,
How
hundreds.
how did you not let that steal your stoke?
Ah, well, it did for like 3 weeks. Um, it really did for 3 weeks, and no, more than that. Uh, but how I didn't let it steal my stoke, even though I was very bummed. It's not like I was stoic through it all. I definitely cried. I definitely complained and whined to my girlfriend at the time and all that whole jazz, all of it. I did all that. And then at a certain point, I was listening to a lot of this is going to sound really funny because a lot of people probably listening to this are may or may not be familiar with the couple people I'm about to name, but I was listening a lot to a guy named David Goggins and Jocko Willink, who are Navy SEALs, and they are hardcore dudes, like straight up. They're get or done type of people, right? Navy SEALs, like David Goggins especially. I mean, both are, but David Goggins, I was like, he's an incredible person. I highly recommend everyone look up who he is. Um, but I was listening to those individuals at the time. I also read both their books. I'm a big reader, so I blasted through those things, and yeah, there was something about like this there's this thing, Jocko, who was a commander in the Navy SEALs, he has this thing. It's like, it's called good. It's like when everything goes wrong, just say good. More time to train, more time to get better. Good. Didn't get what you wanted? Great. Like he just has this really beautiful way of turning bad things into good things. Like I guess Navy SEALs would have to, considering most of the things they face are, well, most 99% of us will never understand. So the hard drive crashed, and I was just like, after the moping and the mourning of it, I was like, my love for what I'm doing here is bigger than that. So, oh well, I got to go now learn 3D animation, I guess, because I want to try to do that. Maybe that's a way to do it. And I did. It spent 6 months. My brother and I built a computer, which is sitting right next to me, that could handle 3D animation. And I tried it, and I learned Unreal Engine, the gaming engine, and did a whole bunch of screen tests and put them in the Stoker machine. And it just didn't feel right. It felt it looked beautiful, but it felt Pixar-y, like very much like a Pixar movie. And I was like, I've already seen this before. Like, it doesn't feel right with the surfing and the colors and the way my characters I was drawing before played off of Chad and stuff. Like, it didn't make sense. So you said this before. It's like listening to a film, not controlling what you want the film to be. And I was lucky I listened to my film tell me like 3D is not the way. So then I went back to hand drawn. Yeah.
Wow. It's just really amazing to me. Especially it's inspiring for anyone who has had a hard drive crash, a computer crash. I've had both in the 3 years of me being in this production process. I've had my computer crash, hard drive crash, and all that. So yeah, I love how you essentially picked yourself back up and instead of thinking about all the things that have gone wrong, kind of pivoted towards strengthening your mind and strengthening your perspective. What can you say to any other creator out there who is in like the deep part of burnout, where they don't really feel like they're capable and they don't feel excited about making anything? What would you tell someone who's there?
Stop. Stop. If you don't like doing it anymore, stop doing it. That's in your control. You're not gonna, like you can completely control that. Just take a break. I'm not saying stop, like give up. I'm saying just take a break. Like walk away. You're the one who's doing all this to yourself. Like literally walk away. When you're stoked again, come back. And if you're having a hard time getting stoked again, there are things you can do, like seek help, which is a big one, on how only you'll know if it's the right thing to do to keep moving forward on it. No one can tell you that. And if that's the problem and you don't know what you should do for yourself, there are exercises which you can do that help you get out of your own way. And you can ask for help about that. But I would say primarily, if you're feeling burnt out, just stop, because you don't want to keep. Here's a mistake I've made many times. I've pushed through burnout, and that can be a really dangerous place to go as an artist, because you can start to lose what you're even doing and who you are and what you're about. And I don't recommend that for anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for saying that. I have had a lot of feedback that's like, just keep going, you can do it, just get it done. And I mean, in hindsight, it was when I was like just trying to finish school. And unfortunately, doing a passion project in school creates somewhat of a dissonance because you're really just trying to meet the expectations of like your department or your graduation requirements. But you make a really great point that, pushing through burnout does not actually address the burnout at all.
It really doesn't. And you said something we should, I would just like to tap on something you said, which is like you just said, like doing it at a school, worrying about what other people think, basically. Well, that's not art. Like that's not art. That's commerce. And it's like not anyone's fault. It just really should be known that like if you're doing this stuff, do it for you. Like really do it for you. You I'm not discrediting structure, and I'm not discrediting boundaries and limitations that can be imposed on a project that do make it better. That's true. But there's a difference between that and worrying what other people will think. Uh, and oftentimes, in my personal experience, my burnout has come from worrying so much about what other people think and not just like following what I'm curious about and excited about. Like they're really not. Uh, does what I'm saying make any sense? I
It
could be.
does. No,
Yeah.
it does. And in hindsight, having now I'm almost 6 months out of college and thinking about, I'm traveling with my degree right now. Like I have this little piece of paper in my suitcase, and um,
What's your degree in?
multimedia cinematic production.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you said that. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
with a minor, like a focus on in screenwriting, you know.
Cool.
And it's super cool. I'm grateful for my time in school. More importantly, I'm grateful for my teachers. My instructor, shout out Dr. Peter Britos. If it wasn't for him, I don't know that I would even be doing this program with HIFF. You know, he has been a super motivating factor, you know, to my creative process. And he's also just been like a support system. You know,
Beautiful.
I'm of the mind, you know, I feel like arts education without any, you know, level of support, and it's like personal support. A lot of what we're making comes from somewhere deeper inside of us. And I've been in, you know, arts education since I was 13 years old. I went to performing arts high school. And
Wow.
yeah, I used to study theater.
Incredible.
Thank you. I studied theater, but it's the thing is that without a layer of support, you lose yourself in that idea of what art, you know, is, and or what it's framed to be for you. I feared losing myself, and I think I definitely did throughout college. And I think now in hindsight, what you said, college is commerce, you know. Like
100%.
we're making things, you know, so we can pass, you know, for a pass or fail, you know, for a grade. And I think that was a lot of my motivation, was so I could pass and so I could be finished. And in hindsight, I don't think that is the right artistic approach, you know. And
Very interesting. Yeah, it's a super interesting topic. You know, it's no, keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go on.
no,
Yeah.
I mean it, but I don't know that, you know, students are being taught passion. Um, and when you're going to school for art, the fun can get sucked out of it, you know. We want to learn, right? But there's this level of, you know, curiosity that can be killed if, you know, it's the curiosity is, you know, purely, you know, for a grade. Um, and so, you know, what you're saying 100% makes sense. And I'm saying this, you know, as a student filmmaker, as now a graduated, you know, filmmaker, and as a filmmaker who really wants to change my approach. What I think is the most special thing about you, Darieus, and about the Stoke Machine is that it really challenges what the common approach to filmmaking is, you know. You know, I was taught just storyboarding and the story and beginning, middle, and end, but, you know, coming from a place where it's like, well, what excites me, what it, you know, makes me stoked, you know, and taking that approach to filmmaking, I think is super powerful.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. You know, hearing hearing you say what you just said, it made me think. I wonder a couple things, and I want to wonder them with you. I wonder if school is oftentimes a place, and has been a place, that sets people up to get a job in a commercial world, in the commerce world. And then there are certain schools where, like, the art is really the focus, and it's a way to show someone technique and things that have worked in the past for other artists. And there's no emphasis on you need to go out and get a job in the world doing this. And then there are some schools that do all that, and they say there is this emphasis where you go out, like Full Sail here in California, or LA Film School, or any of the film schools. Like, I'm sure the idea is you graduate and get a job in the industry. In fact, I know that's what it is. Like at USC, like that's exactly what that is. And I wonder, I don't know what I think about this, but like I wonder if, like, somewhere in there, they lose touch with what art is. Like art isn't commerce. Art is the exploration of an idea. It's not that you can't make art commercial later, but when you explore an idea first as art, commercial consideration comes after. When you make something commercial, you're literally building the plane as you try to fly it. So you're wondering what people think, and you're making decisions and marketing decisions before you've even explored the idea fully. And there's nothing wrong with either approach. I'm not putting down commercial work at all. At all. It's totally a perfectly fine way to do things. It's just, for me, I found it's not what I'm interested in, because I did it for so long, and I was like, this is really not why I like doing this. And I was honest enough with myself to admit that. And so I just wonder if, it's like hearing you describe school, and then me knowing what I know about school, colleges. It just makes me wonder, like, they're setting up a lot of people as commercial artists versus exploring an idea artist.
100%. And I can only speak for myself in my experience. I have unconventional experience through school and through industry. I have been working in the film industry for 5 years now, and I started as a freshman in film school. I got my first job on set for Godzilla versus King Kong, because Godzilla versus King Kong was shooting at Hawaii Pacific University, and they
So
needed,
cool.
yeah, and it was the most amazing experience, because I'm a talker. I like to talk to people. So of course I was in a whole bunch of people's faces and asking them questions. And it was a great opportunity for me as someone who learns by experience. And I got my first, like consistent job on set through that experience. And I was working on Hawaii Five-0, basically through all the way up until the pandemic as a film school student. And so, when I just think about my experience, even before college, the approach to art was, mastery and for career making. And and this is like such a, it's kind of wild to me now that I'm saying this out loud, because I think I'm having this realization as I'm saying it out loud, like that my introduction to art has always been from that perspective, of what's going to make money, what, makes you a professional, not, from an artist standpoint of like the idea of art, or, having just this interest in craft.
Very interesting. And not a wrong way to do it either. Like, it just now might be interesting to try it the other way.
Yes.
Like people should try both and see what works best for them. No, I'm very grateful to be here. I was looking forward to this conversation since I met you at the festival, and I'm so happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Yes.
I could talk about this stuff all day.
Me too. I realized I was having this whole like existential realization that last section that we were talking, because and it really brings this entire conversation full circle, because maybe my experience having started my career in film and just practice with art being career focused and goal centered, I think that approach can stand to be altered make it more enjoyable. And I wonder if that could be the same for other people who maybe just continue hitting a wall. And you've made this approach work for you and fun for you. And it reminds me that, yes, filmmaking, although it's a lot of work, can still be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think that as a person who spent 10 years working in LA, going in the opposite direction of fun, uh, yeah, it's true. I think it's true. Like, I'm just, it's so hard for me to even imagine now, like, making art from any other place anymore, of other than like follow your taste, like whatever you're interested in, that's what you should be working on. And I wish more people nurtured that behavior and nurtured that mindset, because it's like I just get exhausted with this idea that like I should think about what other people want and make that. It's just so uninteresting to me now. Um, but that's just me personally. I encourage people to try that. It's like if you're a painter and you paint in color and you do color paintings most of your life, it would be very beneficial for your color paintings for you to take a break from color and just do black and white ink paintings, drawings for a while. Because when you do that, you learn so much more when you come back to what you're used to, like color, after being a black and white artist for a while. It allows you to see the color in new ways. And I recommend that for everyone who's maybe making art right now, from a place of worrying so much about what other people think. Just try making something that it only matters what you think. And even though it may be very difficult in the beginning to try doing that, just start small and see what happens. See how you feel. And then go back to doing it the other way. And there's, again, I want to just make sure, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it that way, making art wondering what other people think. It doesn't work for me. And I think it informed the way of making art without worrying about what other people think very much for me by doing it the other way for so long. So I encourage anyone listening to experiment, and that's all we can really do at the end of the day, is just try things. Yeah.
Yes, and finding what works for us on an individual level, which I now it really makes sense as to why you're asking people what makes them stoked. Essentially, you're asking them, what excites you, what gets you going. And I feel like when you start thinking from the place of just pure desire, I think beautiful things can be made.
It's true. I want to just say I ask people because I'm genuinely interested in what makes people stoked, what brings them joy. It also, in a way, is a compass for me. See, I believe in following a North Star of Stoke in a way. Like the when I see someone express, like, truthfully what brings them great joy, it's like that's a direction I like to head in, you know? I get really a lot from that. And I think it's bigger than what I get out of it in a way too. It's like when we inquire, even if you don't know what makes you stoked, when you inquire within yourself, what makes me stoked? It's a great question to ask. Because you never know what could come out the other end of it, you know? And I think that type of positivity and that type of encouragement um, is needed in the world right now. It's just, there's so much beauty in people, and when all we hear is about wars and negativity and how awful humans are, I'm not saying that doesn't exist. It does exist, and I'm not saying we should turn a blind eye to it. I'm not saying that. I am saying we should also remember how beautiful we all are, and that we are all humans at the end of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. To wrap this up, I'd like us to answer this question that you've been posing to audiences around the world. What makes you feel stoked this week?
Well, this week, what makes me feel stoked, or
Yeah.
in general?
Well, I assume, I guess I said this week because I assume that your stoke is changing over time, but I guess what makes you stoked in general, and hopefully it's still making you stoked this week.
Okay, so what I could do both really quick. So this week, what's making me stoked are really new ideas, which I'm happy to share with you when we stop recording, Actually, I'll just message it to you. A work in progress. I'm very excited about a new direction my art's going, and it happened this week, and I've been so inspired, and that feels really great because it's exploring an idea that's getting me really excited, and it involves all the things that are like what's the word I'm looking for? It's like it it's my taste, like the taste I have. It's like really coming through in it, and it's exciting for me to see that. Um, and it's still Stoker machine art. It's just very new Stoker machine art to me, and that's really exciting. And then in general, surfing makes me really excited. Probably it sounds like in a similar way that the aerial stuff makes you excited because I just learned so much about life through surfing. Like surfing and nature and being in the ocean is one giant metaphor for how to be in the world to me. So when I go surfing, like whenever I feel like I need uh, to feel grounded, connected, inspired, or contemplate things, I go surfing, and it over delivers every time, in terms of like teaching me a lesson or giving me a better grasp on something I might have not had such a great grasp on. Um, you know, like for example, like maybe I'm feeling pretty impatient or I've been rushing through things for a couple weeks or whatever. And then when I go surfing, the ocean reminds me like not only how important it is to be patient because waves aren't always coming in. You have to wait in between sets, but also how to engage and work with others in the lineup, in the surfing lineup, because you're not most of the time in California, you're not surfing alone. And, it's like you don't want to be a jerk and just be that person in the water who's impatient and trying to catch every wave and only thinking about yourself and only what you need because you want to be satisfied. And it's like remembering, no, like it's important to be patient. I'm in a community of people at this moment in the water. There's maybe 9 other people in the water, and being considerate that they're all out there to catch waves too, right? They're out there to enjoy this space with me, or not with me, sorry, with their time, what they're doing, right? So yeah, like things like that really come to me through surfing. So I'm a better person for being a surfer. So that makes me stoked.
Amazing. I love that. What makes us stoked is, both centered around like moving our bodies. So,
Mm-hmm.
thanks so much for being here with me today and sharing your time with me and your wisdom. I hope the viewers at home have as much to take away from this as I did. And rock on, dude. You're doing amazing. I'm really proud to know you and witness this next era of your creative process.
So cool. So grateful to be here. And I'm really, really glad we got to meet through the Hawaii International Film Festival. And um, yeah, I'm very excited to see your film. So thank you for holding the space for me. And yeah, looking forward to talking again.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, happy Halloween, everybody. And if you're watching this on the HIFF blog, there's so much more to see. I know the HIFF is over for this year, but there's going to be a lot still coming up on the blog. So check out the articles from my fellow Hokie members and other staff at the Hawaii International Film Festival. I hope you're investigating what makes you stoked. I want to thank our guest Darieus for joining me in this enlightening conversation, and mahalo to HIFF and this year's Hokie program for this opportunity to reflect on this year's Hawaii International Film Festival. Aloha.